All right, we are back again for the Coach's Compass. It's your boy, Coach Coop, and my boy, Jay, reporting live again from Europe. And today we're talking about programming, a huge part of strength and conditioning. And not only just programming for a whole team, but programming for individuals specifically to their position, their age, and where they are, whether they're in season, out of season, coming back from injury. And I'm gonna give my boy Jay a few scenarios that's gonna take us through of how he programs, and then as we bring guests on, they'll talk to you guys about how they program and what they do for their athletes. And I'm a kind of keep it simple kind of guy. I don't really use the big terminology like all the other strength coaches and everything like that because I like people to understand, what I'm saying. But I think it's also very important to understand, the scientific words. If we talk about concentric, eccentric, isometric, all the different types of things that we do within the strength and conditioning world. I think that's a definite huge part that a lot of people want to know the why behind and understand. So, Jay, you're programming, and right now you've programmed for your whole team, correct?
Yeah, I program for our U15 guys all the way up to the ELF guys.
And what period are you guys in right now of your program?
So I've kind of gotten away from like the whole periodization stuff with regards to like the youth athletes, just because when you start reading those books, it kind of breaks down like, you start off in the off season and what the training looks like in the off season, and then you start getting a little bit more specific. Um, what I've kind of noticed, especially with the youth athletes, and I feel like you have even yourself have a lot of experience with this, but like the youth athletes don't need that. They don't really need to go from general to specific. They're still evolving in their sport. So a lot of the training for my youth guys still looks very, very general. We're progressing them slowly, but and then as they start to become more advanced athletes, then you know the strength stuff when we have to look more specific. But with regards to the gym stuff, right now, it's still very general. There isn't anything that looks specific to what we're doing on the field. The only thing that I can say maybe looks more specific with them as we progress towards the season is more so our sprint and agility stuff. But at the end of the day, it's only so specific we can get in here. The sport is the sport. So, yeah. Right now, the ELF guys, I've had their programs and their stuff looks a little bit more specific. But with regards to the juniors, which I have a little bit more time with because they're still in school and they're not working 9 to 5s. Um, yeah, more so just general all around.
So if we're talking about general, because that can be general from like fit like gen pop, that could be general for general athletes, that could be general for so many different things. So if you
Yeah.
say general for your programming for the U15, what like is if we take today, we're on a Wednesday, what would their general workout look like? Could you take us through like what specifics they have?
Well, so like these are my progressions, and I'm not afraid to like kind of share what our programming looks like. But regardless of who you come in or who you are when you come in, we kind of start all the guys off that are novice athletes at what I use all 1x20, right? So a majority of everything that they do is one set 20 reps, and we're more so working on work capacity, movement, efficiency is what's big in that. And what I've noticed is, especially in the 1x20 groups, when we try and test, we usually try and test every day. I've gotten out of the habit of testing my 1x20 group because what I've noticed is every time we test our 1x20 group, they're improving in every metric. So if we do a 40-yard dash test, they're always improving. And I don't even think that speaks to the validity or reliability of the 1x20. I think some of these guys, their nervous system is just so sensitive that they look at weights and these motherfuckers jump higher. So with regards to them, I don't even test them anymore, honestly. So what our progressions look like are you go by 1x20. Our guys are usually in that group for about a month and some change, a month to 2 months. And then they go from one by 14. As they progress into 1x14, the movement efficiency has gotten a little better, but it's still not perfect, right? And I like to expose them to 1x20 just because it's not only higher volume, but you're doing an RDL at higher volume, and that form tends to break down when people start to get fatigued. So I try and hammer down technique within the 1x20 and then the 1x14, and obviously as the reps go down, the weight goes up. You go from 1x14 to 1x10. Weight will continually going up, and now we're getting into a little bit more hypertrophy. That's kind of what I like to work towards. So we go capacity, and then we get into more of a hypertrophy work. After 1x10, they go into 2x10. So now we're adding a little bit more volume. Rep is still the rep range is kind of similar to the 1x20 since it's 20 total reps, but the intensity is a little bit higher. From there, we'll go into 2x8, which is we're kind of gravitating a little bit more towards strength and hypertrophy. And then from there, we have what I've been experimenting with is we do a 10 RM, and the guys will come in, and let's say we have back squat today, and they'll come in, and their first set is you'll do your 10 rep maximum of back squat, and you're trying to get as many reps as you can, but you'll leave 1 rep in the tank, right? And then every set afterwards is fixed, because I'm not trying to kill these guys, and that's kind of like our strength test every day. So you may come in today, we have bench press. You're trying to get as many reps on bench press as you can. So we have guys that come in, and for the most part, everything's progressive overload. So the weight will go up a little bit every day. So they'll come in, knocking 100 kilos for back squat. They'll do 10 reps, right? They had 1 rep in the tank. The next time they come in, which is maybe 2 or 3 weeks from then, and they'll hit that back squat again. I'll tell them and we'll have a chart based off how many reps you hit the previous time, you'll increase or decrease. So some guys that came in and they hit 100 kilos for 14 reps, they'll increase, right? And I'm still working on my progressions now, but we go from that 10 RM. Once we max out on what you can do and we squeeze all the juice out of that 10 RM, we go to 8 RM, and that's its own phase. And then we go to 5 RM, and then we go to 3 RM. And from now, I'm trying to figure out what to go from there. But that's kind of where my school of thought with it is, with regards to how I progress my youth athletes. Yeah. And so I think it goes without saying too, where I'm interested a lot with other coaches, but like my window for athletes is usually it's a 5 to 7 year window. For the most part, these kids come in here U15, and by the time I stop seeing them anymore because they have work and they can't come in as consistently is around 5 to 7 years. So I usually try and work and squeeze as much juice out as I can within that 5 to 7 year window.
I mean, that's a pretty good window to have them for, 5 to 7
years. It is,
years.
yeah. It's better than like a 4 year from college.
Yeah, it's almost like, you have them for high school and then one or 2 more years afterwards. You're having them for 5 to 7 years. Now you say, for our listeners that, don't fully know what hypertrophy is, what does that exactly mean?
I think that may look different for every athlete, but for us, hypertrophy for us is if we're looking at rep ranges, hypertrophy is usually 8 to 12 for us, sometimes 8 upwards of 20 reps. I think it can very, very well depend on, the level of the athlete. Hypertrophy for a novice athlete can look different than hypertrophy for a advanced athlete. And that's something that I've been figuring out lately, whether strength looks different for me versus strength for this athlete.
Right.
I think those are some things that I've messed up doing, but usually hypertrophy for these athletes, hypertrophy in the sense of like the definition is usually muscle growth, right? But right. I think it very well depends on what type of athlete we're talking about, and there's other factors that can go into, because even like sometimes I get into debates or arguments with other coaches. It's like, what is strength? because strength for you is different than what strength for me versus strength for him. And that's kind of like when I start getting into these heated debates where it's like, when we're talking about strength, it's just like, it's so general. It's just like, some guy may come up to me and say, hey, can you make me a strength program? And I give him a program and he's like, yeah, but like, you know, what do I hear a lot? This isn't really like a strength program. I'm just like, I promise you, like, this is kind of where you need to start. This is where you need to start, because 4x6 or 1x20. 1x20 is a strength program for these U15, U16 athletes. Some of these U15, U16 athletes think it's, a waste of time. But for me, I'm all about getting better and seeing results. And I feel like you also have to factor in is just like, what is the cost of doing business? And sometimes if I expose my athlete to something that they're not, that they might not be quite ready for, and instead of doing 1x20, we do something like French contrast or overspeed training or triphasic training. And that's something I see a lot done in Europe, where it's just like, there's nothing wrong with that. But actually, no, I take that back. There is something definitely wrong with that, because it's like, whether
I'll wait for it.
There's something definitely wrong with that. Yeah. I'm trying not to shit on people, but come on now. When you use whether you use high intensity or low intensity, especially with youth athletes, the results are going to be the same. The difference is that there's no coming back from some of those high intensity work. So sometimes when I get somebody that's like, hey, I want strength work or I want hypertrophy work, especially on the level of the athlete, I will give you the most remedial version of it, and then try and see if there are results being made. Oh, we're going to keep squeezing as much as we can out of this this small progression of whatever of hypertrophy. And then we'll move into, once we no longer see results, then we'll get into a little bit more advanced methods or etc.
So pretty much what I'm hearing is that, there's a process to strength, right? It's not an overnight fix or just a 4-week thing that just happens. Like, you come in and like, hey, I'm going to give you this program in 4 weeks. Like, you're just going to have strength, right? There's like a progression to it and a process that you had to be bought into to be able to develop the strength. Like, you could have strength when you come in, but do you want more strength, or do you want more, specific strength to a certain area? Or like, when you go into the gym or when you go into a facility, and a lot of coaches will tell you engage the core. And a lot of athletes don't even know how to engage their core, right? We're talking about an area that is so important to all sports. Some people don't even know how to get that engaged, right? Mm-hmm. That's strength right there. Like, that's talking about strength, but some people don't even know how to get there. So there's a process to even getting to that point to be able to build up from it. And that's what I'm hearing you say throughout the whole strength process. Like, you having guys 5 to 7 years, and you're starting them in a 1x20 group, and then progressively getting to a 2x8, and then for like going from there and like seeing the process and the results and kind of developing your program around that, instead of having a one program fixes all. You kind of have something that people start at, and then you kind of see where you can tailor things from to get things better at and what their deficiencies are. Because we all love going in and doing what we're great at. Like, if somebody's great at deadlifting, most of the time that's going to be heavily on their, workout sheet. Or if there's a bench that they're good at or something that they really enjoy doing, they'll always find a way to squeeze that into their program, right? But does that make you better at strength? Does that make you a better athlete by continuously doing stuff that you're always good at? And I think that's
such a general term, strength. Such a general.
And
term.
that's another thing that people, like to bring into argument about strength is general strength. You know what I mean? Like, so my size, so I'm a 100-kilo guy. Am I just as strong or stronger than somebody that is maybe 70 kilos, but able to do less weight for the same amount of reps? Like, that to me, does that make that person stronger than me, or are they just as strong?
Yeah. Are we talking about relative strength? Are we talking about sport specific strength? Are we talking about, upper body strength? Like, Because upper body strength could be if I have a lineman, if he can do a push up. Somebody may say he's not strong, but throw 400 kilos on that bar and he can bench press it.
Right.
So it's and then you may go and then we may have to go all the way to the sport where it's like, okay, he can't do a push up, he's not strong. He can bench 400 kilos, he's strong. He can't he can't extend a defensive lineman, he's not strong. It's just like we're talking like what type of strength are we talking about? Sometimes we have to be very specific when we're talking about strength. Are we talking about body weight strength? Are we talking about relative strength? Are we talking about sport specific strength? And how that athlete displays it, and how that athlete displays it, and what we're talking about is very critical to mention. I feel like sometimes.
And I think, I mean, especially since we're in the strength and conditioning world, I think wouldn't the one that makes the most sense to us be sport specific strength? Because that's what we're ultimately training them for, right? Is their sport as being a strength and conditioning coach. Now, if we're talking about relative strength and we're just training general population, like that essentially makes sense. But if we're training athletes to get better at their sport, wouldn't sport specific strength be the kind of strength that we're aiming towards? To make them better athletes?
Well, I think it depends though, still, because it's just like, if I have a kid that comes in and he's 16 years old and he's like, I've had kids that come in just like, hey, can I get an individualized program for strength or, getting better in my sport? And I'm just like, getting better at your sport right now for this youth athlete is being able to do push-ups, is being able to
Right.
bench press. And it's just like, I've seen it now where it's like, I have guys that come in and I had a kid that came in and he couldn't do, and usually how we start, unless you're on the heavier side, especially if you're skill or combo, you're not touching that barbell to bench press unless you can do 20 push-ups straight, right? And he came in on a test day and he could only do 10 push-ups. He was begging me to do bench press and showed off. He did like 40 or 50 kilos for bench press. When he came in, he tried to go over and join the group for bench press, and I was like, no, you're over here for push-ups. And he was just cranking out push-ups. The one day that he finally was able to do 20 push-ups, we did testing that following week, 65 kilo bench press. And that was in a month. And it's just like, at the end of the day, it's like, it's not about, especially when it comes to novice athletes, it's not the training program or the method that makes you a great coach. It's how you go about prescribing certain methods and programs to these athletes, because you can definitely screw some of these athletes over, and you won't see it in the short term. You'll see it in the long term, where you've robbed these athletes of certain demands or stimuluses that they can take advantage. They no longer can take advantage of. If I came in here and I knew I was going to be here for 4 years, and I start implementing triphasic, French contrast, and overspeed training, you're going to see results. But when the next coach comes in, his ass probably gonna get fired, because he's going to come in and try probably maybe implement something, that they probably should have, and he will not see results from that.
Right. So then my last question with it is, how much does, the bench, the squats, lifting heavy and being able to move that bar fast translate over to their sport? Because you do have guys that come in and they'll be able to bench 150 kilos, squat, 200 plus kilos and all that stuff, but then get on the field and not be able to move a person. So how much does all of this actually transfer over? And how do you get it to relate and be able to transfer to the field?
It is difficult to say. It is difficult to say sometimes, because especially when we're talking about bench press, it's like, obviously, I try and tell my athletes all the time, like, having a big bench press and a big squat it does not matter, right? But then again, sometimes you look at these NFL athletes, and these NFL athletes, obviously they're the cream of the crop, but they have big bench presses and big squats, you know? So obviously presenting or depending on the position, obviously I would like for my O line and D line to have bigger bench presses. I would never say that's going to correlate to their sport, but I definitely feel like it helps, right? I feel like it is a benefit to you in American football to have a big back squat. Will it have a correlation to how fast you are? Absolutely not. But I don't think it comes at a disadvantage. Where it's just like at the end of the day, being strong, right? I think we all know being strong, regardless of the sport, is a benefit. You need that is 100% a fact. Being strong is a benefit. But then again, just like we said before, I think it is relative to your sport. With regards to American football, I feel like we have to be stronger for our positions just because of all the contact and the demand of the sport is very physical. So not only just to push people off of you, but there is going to be a lot of impact. So that's why hypertrophy is so great for American football. There is going to be a lot of pushing and shoving, right? So that's why it also is good for American football. But with regards to correlation, it isn't high. At the end of the day, it's just like, you will see those guys where it looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. But I feel like more often than not, the guys that are, especially in American football, when you start going to soccer and all these other high skill sports, you kind of see less of that correlation. But for the most part, the guys that are great on the field are decent in the weight room as well.
Right. They're usually the guys that are top of the charts in the weight room when it comes to max days, and the guys that kind of lead the
unless
group
it's
in the
like a
weight room.
DB or receiver.
Yeah, there's those outliers that are there. There's some people that genetics just play a huge role, right? Like some people are just they've got it. You know what I mean? They just got the talent, and then weight room is just kind of like it's just a thing to them. Like I do it just to kind of be there. But like you just always got is a strength coach like thing that they always talk about. How do you get all this stuff to kind of play a part into how it makes them better on the field? And that's the biggest thing that we always, are trying to do. How do we make them better athletes and make them perform better on the field? And I mean, I feel like you went into it today on episode number 4, talking about programming, kind of showing how the youth athletes, how you program for them and how you get them, 5 to 7 years is a great amount of time to have, athletes. And like we said, it's going to be very interesting to hear how other coaches program, for sometimes you get an athlete only for a year, or maybe you only give them for their off season. And you have to program for them and you're trying to see what they're trying to accomplish, or maybe you have a guy that's coming back from injury, whatever it may be. There's all sorts of different types of programs out there. And that's not to say that we have the magic end all be all program here with us, right? There might be a coach that comes on that has something that fits you, that works best for you. So like we always say, like not all these programs are perfect. Right, you've got to. It's like taking protein. It's like a diet. All right, you've got to try some things out, figure out what works best for your body, and you should be able to communicate that also with your coach. Talk to your coach and see what's working, what's not working. The numbers don't lie, and also that eye in the sky, that game field won't lie to you.
Eye in the sky, that is a fact.
Yes.
That is a fact.
And
I say it all the time where it's like, I'm not advocating for everybody to use the 1x20 program that I use. However, I feel like it does come with can you get your athletes to do better, or can you get your athletes to do better with doing less of what you're currently doing? Can you see results with less than what you're currently doing? I feel like it does beg that question.
And that's a question that could be answered to anybody that listens to episode number 4. And we're out of here for episode number 4. Appreciate y'all tuning in for today.
Appreciate y'all. We got mics on deck. Pause.
Yo.